France was shaken to the core by the brutal killing of teacher Samuel Paty, and now shockwaves are resonating well beyond the country's borders. Paty was beheaded for doing his job, showing controversial caricatures of Islam's prophet Mohammed during a class on freedom of expression today in the Netherlands. Other teachers now fear for their lives for giving the same kind of lesson. One of the teachers from this Rotterdam school has been absent for weeks. He went into hiding after he received threats following the school commemoration for Samuel Paty. It was at this point that students really noticed a caricature supporting the French satirical newspaper Charlie Hebdo hanging in his classroom for 5 years.
The professor was just using his constitutional rights to express his opinion. And if you don't agree with it, just talk about it and ask him to remove it nicely.
To show something positive about a religion, that's good, but cartoons are most likely to be negative.
I don't think it's really appropriate to put them up at school, especially when there's kids who also have some beliefs.
We are only showing parts of the cartoon that renewed a debate in Dutch society. It shows a headless Charlie Hebdo cartoonist sticking out his tongue at a jihadist wielding a bloody sword. It's entitled Immortal. A number of Emmaus College students have wrongly interpreted the jihadist as the Prophet Mohammed. The photo of the cartoon in the Dutch teacher's classroom was posted on social media soon after Samuel Paty's commemoration. Threats followed, and a young student was arrested. Emmaus College refused to comment to us on this.
We knocked
at the door of 8 mosques and just as many schools, but nobody has agreed to meet us to discuss cartoons and freedom of expression. In the end, a teacher from another school did agree to talk to us. He said he has never felt in danger, but he has asked to remain anonymous. We discussed whether cartoons should be shown at school.
Provocation needs to have a goal. If the intention is to shock and then have a conversation with your children about these things, then maybe it's suitable. But you know, I also talk about sex in my classroom, and we talk about porn movies. I'm not showing those movies. We can talk about it without showing the pictures.
2 Dutch imams have since asked for the blasphemy law scrapped in 2013 to be restored, but others believe freedom of speech should be protected at all costs. One member of parliament from the leading Conservative Party says,
"We will be tougher in our approach to people who threaten cartoonists, journalists, lawyers and judges."
But where do cartoonists stand? We asked the head of a global cartoon movement in Amsterdam if there should be limitations to their work.
Making satire and making editorial cartoons is all about operating on the fringes of freedom of expression and exploring where those boundaries are. The difficulty of this day and age is that violence comes into the equation when you're talking about consequences for cartoons. But I don't think that putting new boundaries is going to help because it's going to be a gliding scale. Cartoonists have self-censorship and have subjects that they will or won't draw about. They have visual references that they will or won't use. Freedom of expression isn't limitless.
Charlie Hebdo is not where it all began. The Danish newspaper Jylland-Posten was the first to publish cartoons deriding the Prophet Mohammed in 2005. The French satirical magazine republished them and added more.
Exercising one's right to caricature and a free press isn't provocation.
Everybody knows what happened next. Charlie Hebdo's assault in 2015 marked the start of a string of jihadist strikes that have taken around 400 lives in Europe. Samuel Paty was one of them, and his murder wasn't an isolated event. Weeks later in Nice, 3 people were killed in an Islamist terrorist attack inside a Catholic church. Vienna was next. A shooting close to a major synagogue left 4 dead. The Islamic State claimed the attack. But how widespread is radical Islam in the Netherlands? Is it fertile ground for a terrorist attack? We asked the question to a Muslim organization in Rotterdam. Their job is to mediate between Islamic and secular institutions.
I cannot save
for 100% that it will never happen here. We had our share of incidents in the Netherlands, not directly from the Muslim community, but by lone soldiers.
The murder still in everybody's mind here is the killing of one of the most controversial and famous figures in the country. Bicycles ride over this chalk outline without even noticing it. It's here cinema director and producer Theo van Gogh was killed 16 years ago. The Dutch enfant terrible paid for his provocations of Islam with his life. The editorialist Ebru Umar worked with Van Gogh for years. She's an outspoken supporter of freedom of speech. She learned the hard way that it comes with a cost.
Everything we wrote was fun, but it was also challenging. But there was humor in what we wrote. We would never think a murder on religious Islamic grounds would take place. And then it happened.
Van Gogh was a charismatic right-winger. He was shocking, just like his documentary on women and Islam. Its explicit, provocative scenes is what sparked his murder by a Dutch-born Muslim. His colleague condemns the silence after this kind of event.
It happened in France now, but someday it will happen here as well. So we just want to ignore it. As long as it doesn't happen in front of your own door, as long as it doesn't affect you, just shut up about it.
Violent protests broke out across the Muslim world in 2005 and 2006 after the cartoons featuring the Prophet Muhammad were published. Hundreds of people were killed during this rioting. The same scenes are still happening today. This is how Muslim countries reacted to French President Macron's crackdown on radical Islam. But Macron's new approach began before and continues after Paty's death. So has nothing changed since 2015?
Since Charlie Hebdo, it has become more dangerous, it's become more unpredictable. We've received more threats because of our work. So in general, it's just become a more complex environment to make cartoons in.
Many questions remain. Does the concept of blasphemy need to be reconsidered by the Muslim community? Or does the Western world need to rethink its secular principles and adapt to a population that is growing increasingly diverse?